You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
I can't edit that out now.
Oh, man. For those of you who couldn't hear, there's a Rocky Mountain barking spider in Travis's condo.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the Two and Out CFL podcast.
Now they have to kick it out, and they do!
Every week, Travis Currah
Does anybody still care about this podcast?
and Brazilian Ty
Hunters are people, too.
talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Are you kidding? This is unbelievable!
Ready, set, hunt!
And we are part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB Brazilian Ty. It is coming up November 22nd at the Grey Cup, Two and Out Live. You can grab your tickets, twoandoutlive.eventbrite.ca. We're raising money for CFL fans fight cancer. We hope to present them with a nice check on the Saturday of Grey Cup. Tickets are $10 all in. There's no extra fees or anything like that. So grab your tickets for Two and Out Live. We hope to have some guests. We hope to have some fun on stage. What should I wear?
I'm going to be wearing black because it's slimming, so, I mean, it's probably not the worst idea in the world.
I'm wearing black right now.
Yeah, actually, I am, too. I'm wearing my Eskimo Empire podcast t-shirt that I slept in.
It's only covering about 1/5. It's only covering about 1/5 of my body, but...
Oh, so you're wearing socks.
Oh, I'm wearing white socks and black underwear, and that's it.
It's not even summer. It's like you can't even say it's too hot.
Dude, I went to a baby shower today. It was hot there. One of the ladies that showed up with a pair of twins. They're 4 years old.
Yeah, nope. I would have left.
Here's the thing. I have a mentality of a child, so the children gravitate towards me.
Uh-huh.
So we were popping balloons left and right, having wrestling matches. It was great.
So you're basically ruining everybody else's time.
Exactly.
Join Two and Out for CFL Fantasy and CFL Pick'em and show Currah and Ty what you got.
They are who we thought they were!
Just click cflfantasy.tsn.ca
Enough from talking about it. There has to be consequences.
and pick'em.cfl.ca.
All right, the first game of the week had a lot going on. Calgary could have clinched first for the West, and a playoff spot was on the line for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers if they wanted it to be figured out by the time Week 21 rolled around, and Winnipeg just took this game over. They beat Calgary 29-21. Matt Nichols is now playing his best football that we've seen him play in a long time. He goes 24 for 33, 358 yards, 2 touchdowns. What is going on with the Calgary defense, man?
I have no idea. It's not like they've had a turnover, but it hasn't been huge. A lot of the principal players are still there. They haven't spent an inordinate amount of time on the field other than lately. So that it just seems strange. And Matt Nichols was able to take advantage of any mistakes they made. They've been missing tackles a lot lately, and they put up 358 yards and 2 touchdowns on this defense. I didn't know if we'd see that or, who would be able to do that. And Matt Nichols definitely wasn't on the top of that list of guys who, I would have thought could do it.
Well, Colaros threw for over 300 yards against them as well. So,
yeah, he's right below Matt Nichols on that list.
It's a lot different than 5 months ago. In July, we are talking about the historic pace that the Stampeder defense is on as far as allowing points, and it has completely flipped. One of your favorite sayings is a regression to the mean, and I think that is what we have seen here. I don't know if we've seen that with the Bomber defense enforcing turnovers, though, because they did exactly that again.
Yeah, and at some point it's going to stop.
It could be the Grey Cup by the time it does stop, though.
Yeah, they they have guys that, go to the football. They're not necessarily going to make a play as soon as you get it, but there's going to be 4 guys there, to make a play on that ball or to try to strip it. It's uncanny how this defense keeps doing this, and I don't understand it because Richie Hall, this isn't exactly what we've seen from his defenses in the past until he got to Winnipeg, it seemed. So at some point it is going to stop. I'm going to stop saying that it's got to be this week, right? I don't know if it'll stop cold turkey, but it's going to slow down. I don't know when.
You know what? I'm thinking we may be watching the MOP and Adam Bighill.
If not MOP, definitely defensive player of the year.
Well, it's between him and Willie, and it's kind of a shame that it has to be an East and a Western nominee because you know that it's going to be Bighill or Jefferson.
Yeah, and you talk about Alex Singleton, and he has so many tackles, but look at the actual defensive plays that guys like Bighill and Willie Jefferson are actually in on, whether it's pass knockdowns, pass interceptions, fumbles, whether it's recovered or forced. They just seem to be involved in a lot more of those plays, which I think are more important than just tackles.
I am really interested in the battle for most outstanding Canadian. I mean, it's Sinopoli, it's Lewis Ward, it's Andrew Harris, and it is Alex Singleton, who had himself 8 tackles in this one. He is all over the field, and you know what? I think there's a good candidate right there to be a guy that goes to the National Football League, and we saw Brian Peters, a linebacker for the Riders a few years ago. He's carved himself out a nice career in the NFL. I think he's a special teams captain now. And Singleton has what it takes to be in that role. I think he is an absolute monster.
Yeah, last year in 123 tackles. This year a little bit lower, only at 115, but they still got a game left. He's just been the picture of consistency the last 2 years. His rookie year wasn't as big, but you're getting used to the league, and if he keeps these numbers up, he's going to be. If he doesn't go to the NFL, he's going to go down as one of the best middle linebackers that has played in the CFL.
But seriously, can the MOP be a quarterback this year? Mike Riley, I don't think it can't be
Mike Riley now.
He's not in the playoffs, so I really don't think you can give it to him. And the way we'll get to the Hamilton-Ottawa game, but the way Mazzoli looked against Ottawa without Brandon Banks, and Bo has been struggling because, and it probably is in good part because of the receiving core. And not that there are bad receivers. There are Eric Rogers, there's Chris Matthews, there's some talent there, but they haven't had the reps that the DeVaris Daniels and the Kamar Jordans and even the Markin Michels have had. So it's hurt the Calgary offense. I think it might be a defensive player or a running back or something like that. And that's why I make the suggestion that, if Adam Bighill wins defensive MOP or MOP, he could win them both. And he's having himself a year. It's really fun to watch.
Yeah, it's super fun to watch. Whenever you're watching Winnipeg, that he's going to be in the middle of everything, and there's always a chance that a huge play is going to be coming for that defense. As for quarterbacks, Bo is going to have over 5,000 yards, depending on, he only needs 154 this week or next week to get that. He's thrown 34 touchdowns, which is, leading that stat by 5. He's only thrown 14 picks. He averages 8.8 yards. He's probably your best bet at quarterback. I know Trevor Harris has more yards, but he's only got 22 touchdowns to 11 picks. It's just, 22 picks or 22 touchdowns in 18 games. I don't think that's good enough. Masoli just has too many picks. Mike Riley just not in the playoffs. I don't think you can win MOP. I don't know what to do with this award because it's going to be a running back or it's not. It can't be a quarterback this year, and that just leaves the door wide open for so many other options.
Oh yeah, and some positions get more attention than others. Basically anybody who touches the ball more. So It's very rare for a defensive guy to do it. I know Solomon Elimimian did it, and maybe we see his old Team 100 partner do it in November. Bo didn't have a bad game here. 22 of 35. He had 274 yards and a touchdown. Lamar Durant had 60 yards. Chris Matthews had 113 yards. As far as the Bombers go, Darvin Adams had 126 yards. Nick Dembski had 60 receiving yards. He had 21 yards. I mean, the Bombers, they really played well, and it didn't take them till the third quarter to take over. What blows my mind is that the fog comes in, and then the offense has really picked up. It was 12-6 at halftime, and then the Bombers put up 20 points in the third quarter once it got foggy.
No, that was just cannon smoke, though. That wasn't the fog, right?
Well, that's what Derek Dennis said.
I read that, and I had to turn my phone off. I'm like, okay, it's time for me to go to bed.
That's the conspiracy theory that
that's the dumbest thing I've ever
going
heard.
Off.
It's so dumb.
Why would they put these cannons off? I don't think they had a touchdown by the time that the fog... But anyway, this game was getting pretty tough to watch. I do not know how that the offenses were able to throw deep when there was that much fog in the stadium.
On a wing and a prayer, you're just throwing it up and just hoping that your guy finds it before the DB does. It was hard to see the ball on TV. I couldn't imagine being in the stadium.
And that's what Canadian football is all about, especially this time of year. You know, playing in the elements. I love it. We saw more elements on Saturday as well. It's not like this one was the worst game to play in, but it came down to a play in the fourth quarter, and my fantasy team took a bit of a hit because of this play.
You really needed that to be a catch, didn't you?
Well, I had Bo and Eric Rogers. Are you kidding me?
Don't worry, you did. You probably did way better than I did.
I had a rough week myself. I kind of fizzled out as the season comes by. I crumbled after Labor Day. But the Stamps are up by 10, or they're down by 10, and there's a few minutes left in the game, and it was third down. So that's the situation too. They're down 10. We know that Jason Moss would have kicked the field goal about 25 yards ago and a couple downs ago, but instead of going for the field goal and taking the points and getting the ball back, they went for the touchdown. And Eric Rogers looked to me like he had a touchdown, went down, and the ball was stripped. And you know what? Watching it at game speed, I could see why the official thought that Rogers maybe was fumbling the ball a little bit and kind of knocking it around as he was going down. But I mean, everything looks completely different in slow motion, including something else we'll get to later in the show. But that looked like a touchdown to me, and they reviewed it and everything, and the play stood, and it was a turnover on downs, and the game was essentially over for the Stampeders and the season for the Eskimos.
To quote Dave Chappelle, I plead the fifth. Because I want nothing to do with this discussion. I'm gonna piss some people off, I'm sure of it, which is nothing new.
Okay, if that's nothing new, then what are you thinking? Is that a touchdown or not?
No, I don't think it is. And because I don't care if you think he had control across the plane. He hasn't completed that catch yet. You have to come down and make the catch. Same thing happens if he's going into the end zone, making that catch, and comes down and that ball comes loose. It's not a catch. So
to me, it looked like he was down enough, elbow down, laying down, and then the ball got stripped.
It was reviewed. They said it was no touchdown. So I mean,
well, here's the thing: if the ref called it a touchdown, then it would be hard to
overturn. It'd be really hard to overturn. Yeah. That being said, we're probably going to have Monday morning something come out saying that they messed that call up.
I don't like when they do that.
I think it looks really bad, and they do it in the NBA too. With the pool report, the last 3 minutes of the game is always under review by the head office, and they come out and they say, "Oh no, the Raptors should have won this game," or there should have been a foul on this play in the Golden State Chicago game, or whatever. It doesn't matter, but it does nothing except infuriate an entire organization and their fan base, because it's like, so you screwed us and you're admitting it. I'd rather just be blind.
I don't like when they come out and apologize. I hope they don't do it.
Yeah.
But
the one thing I do like is now we got to see that it was a close play, so it didn't need the official to call a touchdown to get automatically reviewed. It was going to be automatically reviewed. It was one of those which we talked about earlier in the year, which was how are we going to decide what's considered a potential scoring play. Well, this is that. So I mean, it's not like a team had to waste their challenge like another team did this week. And I think you're right, though. No matter what the call was on the field, that call was going to stand. I don't think it was confirmed. I think it stands.
Well, I think that confirms that the Stamps probably should have taken the field goal.
Oh yeah, I'm sure Essex fans love that.
We go to the next game where Ottawa smashed Hamilton 30-13. They just looked like a team on a mission. They wanted first place in the East, and they got first place in the East. And they did it without William Powell. They decided to give him a rest. They said he was healthy. Moses Madu got the ball, and he didn't do anything on the ground. 11 for 26, so less than 2.5 yards a carry. Trevor Harris, he threw for 3 touchdowns, 23 for 30. And Dominic Davis had 1 pass for 55 yards and a touchdown, the 158.3 quarterback rating. But that was a beautiful play, and that might have been the best play we've seen from Dominic Davis.
Well, it's really the only play. It's the only play we've seen from Dominic Davis. Let's be honest.
Yeah, when you go for the sneak and he drops back and makes that throw, they caught the Ticats off guard, and it was just a beautiful play.
Speaking of quarterback play, you were talking about Matt Nichols last game. He was the week leader for fantasy points. At 22.8. Matt Nichols.
Matt Nichols. Stampeders.
Let that sink in that Matt Nichols was the fantasy points leader for the week.
Wow.
But we digress.
Deontay Spencer was all over the field, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, and man, he was moving the ball on returns as well. He had himself 130 punt return yards. And did the Ticats not have a kickoff in this game? They did not.
No.
So that shows how well that the Red Blacks really handled Hamilton in this one. Brad Sinopoli sets the record for receptions by a Canadian receiver in a single season. 7 catches for 56 yards. An unbelievable season for Brad Sinopoli. And it's good that this is going to a guy actually born in Canada.
Oh, now we're getting into semantics. Technicalities.
The Canadian rules can be a little screwy here, but Cahoon was not born in Canada, was he?
He was born in Utah. He went to and of course he went
Utah.
And he went to BYU. Shocker.
So I'm happy that Brad Sinopoli gets the record. Not bad for an old quarterback.
Yeah, I remember when he was in Calgary, and watching like football, like when we were teenagers and before we started doing this, when we were younger. It would always be brought up that he was a former quarterback, and I was like, well, why would he want to be a receiver? Like all the accolades and everything go to the quarterback. It's the quarterback that wins the game. He gets all the praise. But then he goes out and does what he does what he's done with the Red Blacks the last number of years. It's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense because he is arguably one of the best Canadian receivers that we've seen in a long time. And now he's not stuck behind guys like like he was stuck behind in Calgary, whether it be Henry Burris or if he was still there now, it'd be, Bo. So, I mean, he gets to play and he gets regular playing time. He's a star on that team, and, it just goes to show that, you don't necessarily have to be pigeonholed into a role. You can adjust, and, he's an athlete. And I hate using that because Buck Martinez does it all the time on Blue Jays games. Oh, this guy's a ball player. Yeah, no doubt, Buck. He plays baseball. Thanks. But to be able to have the skill set to do both those positions is pretty remarkable.
Lewis Ward keeps the streak alive with a 33-yard field goal, and it's impressive because the wind was blowing at Tim Hortons Field in this one. And it's got to be talked about. Trevor Harris struggled at times this season. And I know that Red Blacks fans were wanting Dom Davis to come in and take over in certain games, but Harris finishes the season strong. And I'm wondering, I'm hoping he's earned himself another contract, but I'm wondering if Ottawa's wishing they would have given him more than 1 year at this point, because we'll get to it later in the show. I think there might be a green team out west. Maybe a couple green teams out west looking for a new quarterback this offseason. So maybe that 1 year deal did work out for Harris in this case.
I love it when guys bet on themselves like that.
I don't know if he did, if that was the only choice he had, but...
Well, I think that might have had something to do with it too. At the same time, he might have said... with the CBA, we've talked about it lots with the CBA, what it is right now, to be able to wait and see what is going to happen with that. If you're not under contract, then you can go and search for other options if something happens with that CBA negotiation, which we don't know. But there's just so many guys that are free agents right now that I don't think Trevor Harris will exactly be top of the line or front of the line. But I mean, he's going to be, a guy that is
value out of him.
He is going to be coveted by teams that if these guys don't re-sign with the teams they're at now, that he isn't. He's not necessarily going to be the top prize, and I don't want to call him a consolation prize, but I mean, I don't know if he would be the number one pick on a lot of guys or for a lot of GMs, but I know that they wouldn't be upset if they got Trevor Harris.
He might just go under the radar a little bit with, Bo and Riley possibly hitting the market. And maybe that's being overstated and nothing crazy does happen in the offseason.
Yeah, but we're just hoping for chaos, really.
Yeah, because some people just want to watch the world burn.
Present company included.
Quickly on Hamilton. Wow. They are just completely broken without Brandon Banks. I don't know if there's really anything else to say there. It
changes the entire offensive scheme.
Yep, it is clear that Tasker was finding room in the secondary because of Brandon Banks, and they just don't have Mazzoli does not have the chemistry with the rest of the receivers. I mean, Justin Buren, the rookie, he had 1 catch on 7 targets. Marquay McDaniel had 4 catches on 9 targets. Terrell Sinkfield, he had 6 catches for 55 yards. This is not the Sinkfield that, he's been playing DB in the NFL for a few years. So it's going to take him some time to get back up to speed. But the leading receiver here is Mike Jones with 56 yards on 6 catches. So, man, without Brandon Banks, this team really, really changes. And you know what? Next week's game against Montreal means absolutely zero, but I almost think they're going to have to play the starters to try and get this offense in some sort of sync to get ready for the playoffs. And normally, I hate the team that goes to the East for the crossover. I don't like their chances. Winning 2 in a row on the road, the Ottawa game is definitely going to be tough.
It's never been done.
Yeah, exactly. I'd take my chances in the Eastern semifinal over the Western semifinal at this point.
100%.
And that's 100%. What BC's going to get. That's what BC's going to get.
It's never a good time for injuries. Like, let's be honest. But, other times are worse. Nice. I heard that through the phone.
I can't edit that out now.
Oh, man. For those of you who couldn't hear, there's a Rocky Mountain barking spider in Travis's condo. Sometimes they're way worse for injuries than others, and Brandon Banks, they couldn't have asked for a worse time for Banks to get injured coming into a back-to-back, or, during a back-to-back with Ottawa. It's basically, it changed their entire offensive scheme, their entire dynamic on offense. Like you said, and I completely agree that they have to play the starters have to play that entire game next week, because they need all the time they can get to try to figure this out. I mean, you got guys like Sinkfield and Buren in there now who have played limited time. Mike Jones hasn't been a huge part of this offense except for the last couple weeks. Luke Tasker's your new number one, and he's no Brandon Banks. It's no slight on Luke Tasker, but he's not Brandon Banks. So they got a lot of work to do here in the next 2 weeks. And if I'm a betting man, and I am, I'm taking BC in that East semi.
I like that Anthony Chaffee on Ottawa as well. He was getting in Tasker's face. That was some smash mouth football.
I'm sure Ottawa fans really enjoy the penalties too.
I don't think Tasker wants to go against Chaffee in the Eastern Final. Hamilton's saving grace is the way BC has played on the road this season. And we're going to talk about BC in the next game after we say thank you to ATB Financial. And they've got a podcast, We Are Alberta, hosted by ATB economist Nick Ford. It just started in September, and the next episode's coming out November 13th. The first few episodes talking about the legalization of marijuana, Alberta's changing energy sector. Nick Ford, smart guy. So take a listen to this podcast. atb.com/wearealberta. It is atb.com/wearealberta. So BC goes to Saskatchewan, and I think a lot of people are expecting this game to be a bit closer than it was. And the Riders, they took it to the Lions, 35-16. They now sit first placed in the Western Division, but it's going to come down to the Calgary-BC game at the end of the season. The Lions were just dominated. On the offensive side of the ball, they could get nothing going. The Riders controlled the line of scrimmage, and they controlled field position. The Rider offense, literally, they didn't have to do anything. And
they didn't.
BC they were kicking from, their 10-yard line and back. They were on their heels right from the start, and I think maybe the end of the game there was when I thought it was a strange decision for Wally taking the safety in the third quarter, and I think the BC defense ended up coming up with a stop there, but your punter, Ty Long, has probably got the biggest leg in the league on punts, and I thought he should have taken the chance there. But, I mean, the BC offense had nothing going, and the Rider defensive line and offensive line just controlled this game right from the start.
And we saw it, especially in that fourth quarter. I mean, Cameron Marshall racked up 134 rushing yards on 19 carries.
He didn't start the game.
No. When you know a team is going to run, and they run between the tackles, and you can't stop them, that is demoralizing as a defense. And Cameron Marshall ran all over them. Herdman got punished in that middle linebacker spot. He couldn't make the stops when he needed to either. So they really missed Solomon Elamimian there, and he's probably done for the year. I'm not saying Herdman's not. He's going to be a great player in this league, I think. But I mean, at
it's
some
only
point,
a second year, yeah,
exactly right. But the Riders, they just said we're going to run the ball until you can stop us, and BC never stopped them because you look at the stats, the Riders definitely didn't throw the ball. So, I mean, Trey Mason finally seven carries, 28 yards, not a huge night, had the touchdown. Two huge defensive touchdowns for the Riders, which basically won them this game. So, I mean, if you can control the line of scrimmage, it's really hard to lose a football game. and like they didn't give BC anything in the trenches, which was a nice change from what we've seen lately. Before these last couple of weeks, where the O-line just seemed to be in a little bit of disarray, but everything seems to be chugging along now, and they're able to shut down a lot of pass rush with the current personnel they have in there and their setup.
Tyrell Sutton ran hard. He had 12 carries for 50 yards, but when the Lions fell behind, they couldn't continue to pound the rock against the Rider defense, so they had to kind of change it up there a little bit. And I'm just a fan of Tyrell Sutton. I mean, Cam Judge hit him in the first drive of the game, and it looked like he tried to stand in the way of a bull. He had to leave the field.
It knocked his chin strap off.
There. It did. I don't want to stand in the way of Tyrell Sutton, and this is why I mentioned Willie Jeff. Yeah, look at that. The reason I mentioned Willie Jefferson in the MOP conversation, well, he has to be Saskatchewan's nominee. I don't think there's a question about that at all. But he was involved in both of the defensive touchdowns in this one. His arms are about 8 feet long, so when he throws them up in the air for a quarterback, it's pretty tough to miss them. So the interception, I think Aguavin made the catch.
Antigua.
Antigua made the interception there. Aguavin, no, Ed Gainey had a wow. This defense is just full of playmakers.
So the play before that, Antigua almost picked him off on a pass to Shakir Ryan. It went basically through his hands. The next play, Willie Jefferson got his hands up, got it tipped, and Antigua came in and got the pick in the middle of the field. So, I mean,
And then in the second half, Willie strips Lule of the ball, and Zach Evans recovers it for a touchdown. So,
yeah.
And Ed Gainey, another playmaker, he had an interception return for a touchdown. And how about that hit? Separating the receiver from the ball. It was, I believe, Anthony Parker, and 100% clean.
Yep. Oh, yeah, I have no qualms with that hit at all.
That was a textbook hit. He avoided the head, and it was just a beautiful hit. I don't know if he hurt the ribs of Parker or something like that, but I think we'd all rather hurt our ribs than maybe our head. And Zach Collaros.
Nice segue.
It's possible that he has another concussion here. He ran wide. He kind of put himself in a bad situation. And you know what? It almost looks exactly the same as the play as when Willis smashed him when he was with Hamilton. So Odell, I love Odell. And let's face it, some defensive linemen and D linemen that have been around the league for a long time, these guys, they want to hurt the quarterback.
That's literally their job.
It's what they want to do, and that's what he did here. He put his head down, helmet to helmet contact with Collaros, and then Collaros, his head hit the ground as well. And there is so much to talk about on this single play. Now, when you watch it full speed, it's a very bang-bang play.
But you could hear it.
Yeah. But when you put it in slow motion, it looks like one of the most vicious things you've ever seen.
Yeah.
The officials they were calling this like a playoff game. They were letting the guys play. I think there were some holds and some interferences that were not called, and I'm fine with that. I really am. But last year, you tap the quarterback on the head. Literally, you've seen it with the hand on the head, and then it gets called. And I know Eskimo fans are saying, you Rider fans, shut up. This happens to us every week with our quarterback. But, I mean, Andre, I love him. He was standing right there. It didn't get called. And then I think Jones was mostly mad because he had to throw the challenge flag in the first quarter. And I'm shocked. He's only challenged 4 or 5 plays this year. So he had to throw the challenge flag, and it gets overturned. Now, the hit happened. The challenge was made, 15 yards. The thing that I have the problem with is that Collaros is able to finish the drive.
I have a huge problem with that.
Exactly.
I got a couple
why?
things on this hit. Yeah, that's stupid. Absolutely asinine that he stayed in this football game for as long as he did. So, what is the head referee's job on an offensive play?
Watch the quarterback.
That is his job. That is the only person he needs to worry about, is watching that quarterback. Once the ball is gone and the quarterback isn't knocked over, then you can move on. So I don't understand how Andre Proulx misses. I'm like you, I love Andre Proulx, but holy, this looks terrible. It's right in front of you. No reason that it shouldn't be called. And
I just think it's worse that the spotters let him stay in, because Collaros was struggling. He took a knee, he squatted down. He was clearly hurt.
So that is what I have a problem with the spotters. They are useless. As far as I'm concerned, you do not need them.
I'm wondering if they even exist.
If it is roughing the passer due to a headshot, how is that not automatically put into concussion protocol? You saw him get hit in the head, and you see his head bounce off the turf. Are you not worried? Give me a break. We're going to talk about player safety, but yet you watch a guy fall down, land on his face pretty much, not being able to put his hands out because he's probably concussed. And then Chris Jones says it's precautionary. Well, yeah, no doubt. If you're going to make that penalty call as roughing the passer because of that head contact, that is an automatic. You're going to the dark room. That's an automatic pull for me. That it's a joke that he got to stay in the game. I know that the Riders scored a touchdown. It's still a joke because, as far as I'm concerned, a player's mental health is way more important than a win. We don't need these guys, developing severe mental issues further down the line, because what kind of quality of life is that? If they're going to have spotters, the spotters are going to start doing their job, because this is a joke.
And this might be his, third concussion within a year? That's not a good spot to be in. And even after the hit, though, he was clearly struggling.
Yeah, he bent over a couple times and trying to regain his composure a little bit, maybe, and try to get some of the cobwebs out. But as far as I'm concerned, none of that stuff matters. He should have been pulled the minute that they made that call, because you called it because of head contact. Well, if there's helmet to helmet contact, and people are saying, well, it was. I read a report on Twitter, I can't remember who it was. It was more that he hit the jaw, not the helmet. I'm like, that's even more of a reason. There's no protection on the jaw other than a little piece of plastic. If you're going to call a guy, if you're going to call a penalty on a guy going with a headshot for roughing the passer, helmet to helmet contact, how are you not pulling? You could pull both of them out for concussion protocol, as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, the guy who took. When Collaros gets hit like that and you see him fall like he did and smash his head off the turf again, so he takes 2 blows to the head in the span of a second, do your job and get him out of the game, because what if he gets hit on the next play and he's knocked unconscious? How stupid do you look? It's such a bad look to let him keep playing. And you got and I understand Matt Dunnigan saying that they need to pull him out right away on the panel, but then David Sanchez saying that, well, he's not showing any signs. It's like he shouldn't have to show signs. They should be more concerned about the blow to the head he took, not what he looks like. They need to check him out regardless, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's an absolute joke that he got to stay in this game, because it could have been a hell of a lot worse for Zach.
So Collaros leaves the game. They say it's precautionary, but
I don't buy that.
They're just saying that. We don't know how he's feeling this morning or tomorrow morning, and they do have a bye week, so maybe that's this last week of the season bye for the Riders is a bit of a blessing, because they also lose Trey Mason, who actually had a really nice touchdown run in this one. He had 7 carries for 28 yards, and then Cam Marshall was able to come in and take over the game, 19 carries for 134 yards. So it's almost good that they were resting Thigpen here. We don't know how serious Trey Mason's injury is, but they've still got Marshall and Thigpen here. the game was just dominated from the Riders right from the get-go. I mean, Jones was moving around, Hughes and Jefferson putting them inside against the guards. I mean, Hughes looks like he could have played defensive tackle, never mind defensive end. It was a wild performance and a fall back to earth a little bit for the Lions here because, I mean, they went into Calgary and won, and you're thinking, hey, is this team's road issues over? But apparently not. Brian Burnham, that was the only nice play. There was a 44-yard touchdown pass to Brian Burnham on Luches Purifoy, who had a rough start.
That seemed to really spark him, though.
He's playing his old team. He fumbles the ball on the kickoff return in the second half. He gets burned on the touchdown to Burnham.
Oh, that was so bad. But then he
comes back. And then he comes back and has himself a nice kickoff return after that. I guess it should be mentioned, maybe it's time Brandon Bridge goes the way that Brad Sinopoli did. The guy's an athlete. You can't deny that.
But right now, we kind of need him to play quarterback.
Yeah, they might need him to play that. I'd say just get Nick Marshall the reps.
really need BC to beat Calgary to get 2 bye weeks. And maybe Collaros will be better by then.
This is how much the Riders trust Brandon Bridge. The first 12 plays, 10 rushing plays.
Yeah. He went 4 for 9 for 44 yards.
Well, I mean, when he throws a 3-yard pass, he throws it 100 miles an hour and 3 feet over your head. So
yeah, basically Nolan Ryan.
Yeah, maybe he could be the closer for the Blue Jays next year.
Yeah, because that's the only problem with the Blue Jays.
So the Riders win. They clinch a home playoff game. Winnipeg is 3rd. BC is 4th. The only thing to figure out is Calgary playing BC Saturday night. And, well, Calgary's got a lot to play for. I kind of wonder what the Lions are going to do. They've played well at home, and it's Wally's last ever game at BC Place. Now, does that mean something to Wally Buono? It might mean something to his players, but will Wally just go into it, try to keep the guys healthy for the playoff game in Hamilton?
If he does, I don't like it when teams do that. I'd rather, guys get their normal reps, go through a normal routine. We've seen it with teams, namely the team that is going to be playing for first place next week, rest guys late in the year, and come playoff time or come Grey Cup time, they are not firing on all cylinders. So if I'm Wally Buono, I am playing it like a normal game that you need to win. I'd rather go out to Hamilton on a bit of a win streak, especially after getting manhandled by Saskatchewan like he did. Go home, get the job done, get this team's confidence back, and go out east. So that's what I would do. I do understand the argument for trying to keep guys healthy, but he's got Sutton, Jeremiah Johnson, and Chris Rainey at his disposal. You can probably figure out a running game between those three, and then you can limit snaps for players, but I wouldn't take them out of the lineup entirely.
And you know what? Kind of the same thinking as Hamilton, the way that the Lions offense struggled against Saskatchewan, maybe they're going to want to try and get him going against Calgary at home to kind of get on a little bit of a roll heading into the playoffs.
Speaking of I got something about struggling offenses before we go to the next game.
What do you got?
Do you know who the leading quarterback was for fantasy points in that Saskatchewan BC game?
Oh, was it Jonathan Jennings?
He had 2.7. So Zach Collaros, Brandon Bridge, Travis Ulay, Jonathan Jennings combined for 13.5 fantasy points.
Oh!
Cody Fajardo had 6.6.
No.
Yes. Cody Fajardo had a rushing touchdown. This game really showcased the quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable that the Riders put up 35 and the offense did Zero.
It's been the theme of the year.
It has been. I don't know if they can do it in the playoffs, though. I really don't know if they can do it 2 more times, or 3. Montreal beats Toronto 40-10 to wrap up Montreal's season at home, and I think the bigger story in this game is almost, what has happened off the field. So before the game, leading up to this game, there was a report coming out that the entire locker room hates Johnny Manziel and all this and all that. And you know what? The game started and Montreal looked like more of a team than we had seen them look for a few years. William Stanback scores a nice touchdown in the first half. You know what? I think they've got 2 good running backs there. Lawrence Pittman had 6 carries for 60 yards. William Stanback, 9 carries for 60 yards. And he also had 2 catches for 52 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they've got some good young running backs there. And I don't think the Sutton trade really sets the Owls back at all, really. But there
makes them younger and it saves them money. That's going to be huge going forward if they want to improve, especially through free agency.
Late in the second quarter, Manziel ends up, I don't know, it was kind of a weird play, a bit of a breakdown there in the pocket, and I think it was an incomplete pass. And then it looked like Manziel said something to his left tackle, Tony Washington.
Oh, my favorite lineman.
It set Washington off, and it looked like he wanted to just strangle Manziel. And I mean, there were people coming out saying, hey, there's no issues in this locker room. Manziel is going out and saying that there's not a guy in that locker room that I wouldn't call my friend. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. It's not all roses, and on the other side, it's not, complete chaos. But then we saw Washington go off on Manziel a little bit, and there was some pushing and shoving. He was trying to get at Manziel on the sideline, but it went from one extreme to the other. This Alouettes team looked like they were just having a blast out there. Eugene Lewis had himself a 61-yard touchdown pass to George Johnson. And yes, Eugene Lewis is a receiver. They just pulled out all the stops.
He was the best quarterback they had today.
So he just pulled out all the stops, or the Owls did, for this game to let the fans go home happy here. But and then the news comes out before the game that the Owls sign 2 of their quarterbacks to 2-year extensions. Vernon Adams, Antonio Pipkin, and Jeff Matthews to a 1-year extension. So they could possibly... I don't get really what's going on there. So
I don't think anybody does.
So they come out for the second half, and Manziel's nowhere to be seen. They go with Antonio Pipkin. And, I mean, I get trying to get guys reps, but I really thought they would have stuck with Manziel the entire game. I found that quite puzzling.
So if Manziel is your quarterback going forward, and he's already had limited snaps this year, there is no reason to take him out of this football game. He needs all the reps he can. He needs all the reps he can get. I don't get it. If you have a starter, or not even, he doesn't even necessarily have to be a starter. You want to know what you have, and to get him, the more experience he gets, the better off he'll be, and he's going to get to go through a full training camp with this team next year. It just makes zero sense why you would take him out of this football game. Unless something else happened that we don't know about or aren't privy to. But like you were saying with him and Washington getting into it, if you watch that play, Washington got absolutely walked by the defensive end. And I don't know if that's on him or if there was a missed protection call, because you can see the center talking to him and stuff like that. So maybe it was a bit of a communication breakdown, like you said. But, 15 minutes later, they're best friends. Again, it seemed like on the sidelines they were, laughing and smiling and patting each other on the back. So I think that's kind of a moot point now. But the whole thing of Manziel getting pulled out of this game, I mean, look at it baseball-wise, I guess Pipkin comes in out of the bullpen and secures the win for Manziel because he's the one that's going to get credit for this.
Yeah. As far as Toronto goes, Levi Noel at 106 yards. They really didn't get much going at all here. So I guess we stay with Montreal. They looked like they were just having a blast on the sideline there. And I think it does need to be said. John Bowman was out there playing like a warrior. He ended up getting a sack. He had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. It's his last game ever in Montreal. He had 2 fumble recoveries.
Yeah, he's only 98% sure.
Maybe there's a 2% chance that he comes back next season. But he's got over 125 sacks, over 400 tackles. He's got 2 Grey Cups, one of the greatest defensive linemen ever to play in the CFL. And you know what? It was a nice way for him to go out at Percival Molson, I thought.
It's the perfect send-off, right? He gets the touchdown. And it's a guy that has been there his whole career, has been through the ups and downs of this team. Plays the game like the way you would want him. Like he plays every down like it matters. You don't see him take anything off, any plays off. It sounds terrible. He plays the game the way that you want him to play it, the way it's supposed to be played, which is awesome. And to be there for as long as he has, and for only one team is just an amazing feat.
He sure looked like he enjoyed Woody Barron's book on the sideline.
They all did. It seemed there's like something shiny. Ooh. They were like, it was like a moth to a flame. Everybody was huddled around that thing
Great
after
song.
every play. Yeah.
Hey, great way to sell the book, man. I like that side hustle that Woody's got going on there. Now, I mean, in meetings this week, Mike Sherman says he plans to be back next year. It looks like Kavis is going to be back next year. They're going to go into next season with Mike Sherman, Kavis Reed?
I guess. I wouldn't want Mike Sherman running my team. It looks like he literally has
Hey, they put up 40 points here.
Yeah, that's great. He still literally looks like he has no idea what's going on the sidelines. Like, no idea. He looks like when you FaceTime or something with your parents or your grandparents and all you see is the top of their head because they can't figure out the camera on the laptop. That's what Mike Sherman looks like to me.
Oh, that's accurate. You can't dispute that. I mean, we haven't seen another microphone incident, but
oh my God, don't get me started.
You know what? How bad are the Saskatchewan Roughriders kicking themselves for losing to this team in July? They would be first place right now. And you know what? The sweep to Ottawa hurts as well. Yeah. Ottawa swept the Riders, and they split with Montreal. That's big.
That's why I hate people who say that, like, you see it all the time in hockey, like, these 2 points tonight are huge, blah, blah. And then you'll see somebody, it's October. It's like, well, no, the 2 points in October is still the same as 2 points in April. And it's the same in football. Yeah. Those 2 points, on August long weekend, would have been real nice to have. Or was it August long? I know it was a long weekend. They would have been really nice to have.
It was.
Or was it July long?
Canada Day, I think.
It was Canada Day weekend. Those 2 points would have been really nice. Those 2 points would have been really nice to have right now because they would be cooled off, sitting waiting for a team to play in the West Final. 6 points they really missed out on.
We sit here at the end of the season. The Riders 7-3 inside the division. The Calgary Stampeders 4-5.
Yeah, this is a bizarro world.
It is completely wacky. We are a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. Check out the Undad Podcast, a podcast about family and how you are formed by your environment, hosted by performer and dad Trent Wilkie. I found a dad for you, Ty.
If you're shaped by your environment, then everything is starting to make a lot more sense for me.
Check out the Undad podcast as a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, albertapodcastnetwork.com. You can also get your tickets for 2 and Out Live. I mean, Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB, really big on helping us get this together. November 22nd at the Grey Cup in Edmonton. 2andoutlive.eventbrite.ca, raising money for CFL fans fight cancer. All right, it's going to be a bit of a wash this week, but it's the final week of fantasy. It's the final week of the season. Only one of the games matters, but we will be here on Thursday talking about that. And then next week, it is the playoffs. Oh, yeah. I cannot wait for those to get underway. Brazilian Ty, we'll talk to you Thursday, all right?
Sounds good, buddy.
Rate, review, subscribe on iTunes, and we shall talk to you then.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.